Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! A jittery breath condensed on the mirror as the young man's apprehension grew, fogging the reflective surface as he shaved his shin, a task unfamiliar to his hands. 25 years old, and this ritualistic grooming was a novel experience. The bathroom scene revealed a figure, tense with trepidation, contemplating a rash bet, now regretted. "Why did I agree to this?" he whispered, rinsing the razor. The challenge, initially trivial during a few rounds of drinks and a lively basketball game, was coming back to haunt him. The dare was to attend a costume party, but not as himself, a thought that now made his stomach churn. Just then, the door creaked, startling him. His roommate, always curious, peered in. "No turning back now, eh?" Letting out a resigned sigh, he grabbed a towel, nodding. "You guys won't let me live it down if I back out." "True." Cooper grinned, leaning against the doorframe. "The guys are placing side bets on whether you'll chicken out. Tell them to put their money on me showing up. I don't go back on my word." Cooper disappeared, leaving James alone with his thoughts and half a leg still unshaven. He'd always been the reliable one, the guy who followed through, even when it meant slipping into a form-fitting black cocktail dress and wearing a wig for a night. An hour later, James stared at the auburn wig resting on his bed. It was quality, borrowed from the theater department where his friend worked. The dress hung from his closet door, tags still attached. He'd spent more than he intended at the boutique, reasoning that if he had to do this, he wouldn't look ridiculous in some cheap costume shop outfit. His phone buzzed with texts from friends, all variations of the same taunting encouragement. None of them actually believed he would do it. That thought alone strengthened his resolve. The transformation took longer than expected. Makeup tutorials played on his laptop as he carefully contoured his face, softening angles and accentuating features he'd never paid attention to before. The dress slid over his frame, hugging his waist in a way that surprised him. The padded bra beneath created the illusion of a feminine silhouette. When he finally stood before the full-length mirror, the auburn wig perfectly styled around his face, he hardly recognized himself. The silver heels added 3 inches to his height, making him wobble slightly as he practiced walking. "Who are you?" he whispered to his reflection. Cooper whistled when James emerged from his bedroom. "Damn, if I didn't know it was you!" "Just drive me there before I change my mind," James said, grabbing a small purse, another borrowed item, and checking that his ID and phone were inside. The party was at an off-campus house known for elaborate themed events. Tonight's invitation had specified iconic characters as the dress code. James had chosen no particular character, just a generic, elegant woman. Less recognizable meant less chance of being immediately identified. Cooper parked a block away. "You sure you don't want me to walk you in?" James shook his head. "The bet was I go alone. I'll text you when I want to leave." Each step toward the house felt like walking through concrete. The silver heels clicked against the sidewalk, announcing his approach. Music spilled from open windows, growing louder as he neared. Someone on the porch whistled as he approached, and he forced himself to smile instead of turning around. "Looking gorgeous, honey!" a girl in a Wonder Woman costume called out, holding the door open. James nodded in thanks, voice caught in his throat. Inside, the party was packed with bodies in varying degrees of costume commitment. Superheroes mingled with movie villains, politicians with celebrities. He made his way to the kitchen, desperate for a drink to calm his nerves. The counter was lined with bottles, and he reached for the vodka. "Let me help you with that," a voice offered from behind. He turned to find Melissa Chen smiling at him. His heart plummeted to his stomach. Of all people to encounter immediately, it had to be her, the girl from his economics class who had inhabited his daydreams for months. She wore a simple black dress with cat ears, whiskers drawn on her cheeks. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders. "Thanks," he managed, pitching his voice higher than normal. "I'm Melissa." She mixed a drink with practiced ease. "I don't think we've met before." He hesitated, realizing he hadn't prepared a female name. "Sela." "That's beautiful. Is it Hebrew?" He nodded, vaguely remembering reading that somewhere. She handed him the drink, their fingers brushing momentarily. "Cheers, Sela. To new friends." She clinked her glass against his. James sipped the drink, mind racing. He needed to escape this conversation before she somehow recognized him. In economics, he sat 3 rows behind her, too nervous to ever approach. She probably wouldn't know him by sight, but his anxiety wasn't listening to reason. "So what brings you here?" she asked, leaning against the counter. "I don't think I've seen you at these parties before." "Friend dragged me along," he lied, scanning the room for an escape route. "Well, I'm glad they did." Her smile reached her eyes, crinkling the corners. "Most people here are just looking to hook up. It's nice meeting someone new." James swallowed hard. In his regular life, he would have given anything for this conversation with Melissa. Now, dressed as someone else, it felt like a cruel joke. "Do you go to Westlake?" she asked. "Yeah, finishing my degree." That much was true. "What's your major?" "Business," he answered automatically. Her eyes lit up. "Really? I'm economics. We probably have some overlap in courses." James nodded, taking another sip to avoid speaking. This was getting dangerous. "Want to get some air?" Melissa gestured toward the back door. "It's getting stuffy in here." Against his better judgment, he followed her through the crowded living room and out onto a spacious deck. The October air felt cool against his skin. Music from inside became a muffled backdrop to the night sounds. Melissa leaned against the railing. "Much better. I love parties, but sometimes need a breather." "I know what you mean." James was surprised by how comfortable he felt in her presence, despite the circumstances. "So, Sela, tell me something about yourself that most people wouldn't guess." He considered the question. "I'm actually pretty shy. Being here tonight is outside my comfort zone." "I would never have guessed. You seem so put together." She studied him with genuine interest. "I admire that. Pushing boundaries." "What about you?" He deflected. "What would people not guess about Melissa?" She laughed softly. "That I'm terrified of graduation. Everyone sees me as this confident person who has it all figured out, but I have no idea what I'm doing." "I think that's most of us," James offered. "We're all just pretending." "Including you in that beautiful dress? Because you look like you know exactly what you're doing." Heat rose to his cheeks. "Especially me." They talked for what felt like hours, moving from topic to topic with surprising ease. James found himself forgetting about the bet, about his disguise. He was just enjoying Melissa's company, her laugh, the way she listened intently when he spoke. "I feel like I know you," she said eventually, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "There's something familiar about you." His stomach tightened. "I have one of those faces, I guess." "No, it's not that." She tilted her head, studying him. "It's the way you talk about things. Your perspective. It reminds me of someone." "Oh?" He tried to sound casual. "There's this guy in my econ class. Super quiet, sits in the back. But whenever he contributes to discussions, he has this thoughtful approach that's..." She trailed off, eyes widening slightly. "Wait." James froze, trapped between fight and flight responses. "James?" she whispered, leaning closer. "James Miller?" The moment stretched between them, a tightrope he couldn't balance on any longer. "How did you know?" he finally asked, dropping the higher pitch he'd been maintaining. Instead of the disgust or anger he expected, Melissa's face broke into a wide smile. "Your hands. You have these distinctive freckles across your knuckles. I noticed them when you presented that market analysis last month." He looked down at his hands, betrayed by details he'd never considered. "I should go," he said, standing abruptly. The silver heels wobbled beneath him. "Wait." She caught his arm. "Why did you do this? Is it some kind of experiment?" "Lost a bet," he admitted, mortification washing over him. "My friends didn't think I'd have the guts to come here dressed like this." "That's it?" She looked almost disappointed. "What were you hoping for?" She shrugged, a smile playing at her lips. "I don't know. Something more meaningful than a stupid bet." "Well, sorry to disappoint you." His embarrassment was morphing into defensiveness. "You haven't." She moved closer. "Actually, I've been trying to find a way to talk to you all semester." His brain short-circuited. "What?" "You're always so quiet, but everything you say in class is brilliant. I've wanted to get to know you, but you never hang around after class." "Because I rush to catch glimpses of you in the hallway," he admitted, before he could stop himself. Melissa laughed, the sound warm in the night air. "So, we've been circling each other all this time. And you had to recognize me in a dress and wig for us to finally talk. Life's funny that way." Her eyes held his, unblinking. "For what it's worth, I think you look beautiful." Before he could process her words, she leaned forward and pressed her lips gently against his. The kiss was brief but electric, sending shockwaves through his entire body. "I've always been attracted to your gentle nature," she whispered against his lips. "The outside package doesn't change who you are." Something shifted inside him at that moment. A realization, a permission he hadn't known he needed. The dress, the makeup, the wig. They'd felt foreign at first, but standing there with Melissa, he felt a strange sense of rightness. "I should probably go home and change," he said, though without the urgency he'd felt moments before. "Or..." Melissa took his hand. "You could stay as Sela for tonight. We could go somewhere else, talk more. I'd like to get to know both sides of you." He hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that too." They slipped away from the party, walking to a quiet cafe a few blocks away. James no longer noticed the stairs or the click of his heels on the pavement. Something had awakened in him, something that had perhaps been dormant for years. That night marked the beginning. Over coffee, they talked until closing time, sharing stories and dreams. When Melissa asked if Sela was just for tonight, James couldn't give a definitive answer. The truth was, he didn't know anymore. In the weeks that followed, James and Melissa became inseparable. She supported his exploration, never pushing but always accepting. Sometimes he was James, dressed in jeans and button-downs. Other times, Sela emerged in flowing blouses and skirts. The auburn wig gave way to his own hair, growing longer as he stopped visiting barbers. His friends were confused at first, especially when they realized their bet had triggered something much deeper than a one-night costume. Cooper was surprisingly supportive, shrugging and saying, "As long as you're happy, man." 3 months into their relationship, sitting in Melissa's apartment surrounded by textbooks, he finally found the courage to say it aloud. "I think I'm transgender." Melissa set down her highlighter, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "I know. You knew before I did, didn't you? I suspected there was something more to your comfort as Sela than you were admitting to yourself. But this was always your journey to take." He nodded, tears welling. "I've been scared to say it, even to myself." "And now?" "Now I'm still scared, but I also feel free." She smiled, eyes shining with her own tears. "Freedom looks beautiful on you." The transition wasn't easy. There were painful conversations with parents, friends who drifted away, and the exhausting process of medical consultations. But through it all, Melissa remained constant, a lighthouse guiding Sela home to herself. By graduation, Sela's blonde hair had grown past her shoulders. Hormone therapy had softened her features, and the business suit she wore to accept her diploma fit in ways that felt right for the first time. When her name was called, her legal name change still in process, she walked across the stage with confidence she once could only imagine. Their first apartment together was tiny but perfect, a one-bedroom with windows that caught the morning sun. Melissa's economics degree landed her a position at a financial firm, while Sela began building a career in marketing. Evenings were spent cooking together, planning their future, and sometimes just lying in contented silence, marveling at the journey that had brought them together. 2 years later, on the anniversary of the costume party that changed everything, Melissa suggested they return to the same house, now rented by new students who continued the tradition. "Are you sure?" Sela asked, adjusting the dark blue dress she'd selected for the evening. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, no wig necessary. "I want to celebrate where it all began," Melissa replied, fastening a necklace around Sela's neck, a small silver pendant in the shape of a butterfly. "Transformation deserves recognition." The party was much like Sela remembered, crowded, loud, full of elaborate costumes, but this time she moved through the space with confidence. Some faces were familiar, graduate students who might remember James but had never met Sela. No one connected the dots. They found themselves on the same deck where Melissa had first recognized her. "Happy anniversary," Melissa said, producing a small box from her purse. Sela's heart raced as she opened it to find a ring, a delicate band with a single diamond catching the moonlight. "Are you asking?" "Yes." Melissa took the ring and held it poised at the tip of Sela's finger. "I want forever with you. All of you. The person you were, the woman you are, and whoever you continue to become." Tears blurred Sela's vision as she nodded, unable to speak. The ring slid perfectly onto her finger, sealing a promise. The wedding plans unfolded over the next year. They chose a small venue, a garden with a view of the lake. Sela's parents, after initial struggles with acceptance, agreed to attend. Her father even called to awkwardly ask if he would be walking her down the aisle. "I'd like that," she told him, throat tight with emotion. It would mean everything to me. Melissa's large, extended family embraced Selah completely, her future mother-in-law insisting on accompanying her to find the perfect wedding dress. They spent a Saturday afternoon moving from boutique to boutique until Selah emerged from a dressing room in flowing white, the fabric cascading around her like water. "That's the one," Melissa's mother said, dabbing at her eyes. "You look radiant." Standing before the mirror, Selah barely recognized the reflection as the same person who had nervously shaved his legs for a bet years ago. The journey from James to Selah had transformed not just her body, but her entire life. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and perfect. Selah sat at the vanity in the bridal suite, a makeup artist applying the finishing touches to her face. Her blonde hair had been styled in an elegant updo, small flowers woven throughout. "Nervous?" her bridesmaid Rachel asked, adjusting the veil. "Strangely, no." Selah smiled at her reflection. "I've never been more certain of anything." There was a gentle knock at the door, and her father entered, looking handsome in his tuxedo. He stopped when he saw her, eyes filling with tears. "You look beautiful," he managed, voice rough with emotion. "Thank you for being here," she said, standing to embrace him. "For accepting me." "I'm sorry it took me so long." He held her carefully, mindful of her dress. "I was wrong, and I've missed so much time." "We have today," she assured him, "and all the days after." The ceremony was set to begin. Selah took her father's arm, heart full to bursting. Through the doors, she could see guests seated in white chairs, flowers adorning every surface. At the altar stood Melissa, radiant in a champagne-colored gown, waiting. As the music began, Selah took her first step down the aisle. Each face she passed reflected joy. Friends who had supported her transformation. Family who had learned to love the woman she had become. Colleagues who knew only Selah, never James. With each step, memories surfaced. The nervous young man shaving his legs for a bet. The person who felt an unexpected rightness in a borrowed dress. The woman finding her true self with every passing day. The journey had not been easy, but walking toward Melissa, Selah knew every difficult moment had led her precisely where she was meant to be. When she reached the altar, her father placed her hand in Melissa's, completing a circle that had begun on a deck at a costume party. Melissa's eyes shone with tears and promises. "You are stunning," she whispered. The officiant welcomed everyone, speaking of love's transformative power, of journeys taken separately and together. Selah and Melissa had written their own vows, words that acknowledged their unique path to this moment. "I found myself the night I found you," Selah said, voice steady with conviction. "You saw me before I could see myself, believed in me when I was afraid to believe. You've been my constant as everything else changed. I promise to love you through all your transformations too, to hold your hand through every journey, to be your home no matter where life takes us." Melissa squeezed her hands. "You showed me what courage looks like. Every day you choose authenticity, and you inspire me to do the same. I promise to walk beside you, not ahead or behind. I promise to listen, to grow, to celebrate every victory and comfort every pain. You are my person, Selah, in every form, through every change." They exchanged rings, simple bands that symbolized commitments far more complex and beautiful than metal could express. When the officiant pronounced them married, Sela felt the final pieces of her journey click into place. The reception continued well into the evening. They danced their first dance to the same song that had been playing when they kissed on the deck years ago. Sela's father gave a toast that left few dry eyes in the room, speaking of learning and growth, and the gift of his daughter's patience. As midnight approached, Sela and Melissa slipped away from the celebration, driving to the hotel where they would spend their first night as wives. In their suite, surrounded by rose petals and champagne, Sela stood at the window overlooking the city lights. "What are you thinking?" Melissa asked, joining her. "About that night at the party. If someone had told that person in the borrowed wig and uncomfortable heels that this would be their future." She shook her head in wonder. "Would you have believed them?" "Not for a second, but I would have wanted to." Melissa wrapped her arms around her wife's waist, resting her chin on Sela's shoulder.
"It's amazing how one moment can change everything."
"One bet?"
Sela laughed softly. "I should thank those guys someday."
Or maybe it wasn't the bet at all. Melissa turned Sela to face her. "Maybe it was always inside you, waiting for the right moment to emerge."
"Either way, it led me to you."
Sela touched her wife's cheek.
"And that makes every difficult step worth it."
They kissed in the soft light, two women bound by love and understanding, their shared path stretching forward into possibilities neither could have imagined before a costume party and a case of mistaken identity that wasn't really mistaken at all. Years would pass, careers would advance, a house would be purchased, children would join their family. Through it all, Sela would sometimes look at old photographs, some of James, most of her transformation, many of her life with Melissa, and marvel at the journey. The blonde hair would remain, though styles would change. The confidence would grow with each passing year. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when their children were asleep, Sela and Melissa would revisit that night. The silver heels, the black dress, the auburn wig, and the kiss that saw beyond appearance to the truth waiting to be discovered. Their love story, beginning with a bet and a costume, had revealed that sometimes the most authentic self comes dressed in borrowed clothes, waiting to be recognized not just by others, but by oneself. Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!